The late evening hum of the New York City subway echoed through the underground station like a heartbeat, steady, tired, and indifferent. People rushed past in coats and headphones, eyes fixed on phones, lost in their own worlds. But Ethan noticed her. She sat alone on a cold, metal bench near the far end of the platform, her shoulders hunched, her knees pulled in, as if trying to disappear into herself. Her long hair hung like a curtain, partially hiding her face, but not enough to disguise the quiet trembling in her hands. She wasn't dressed like someone used to being here. Her coat, though damp and a little torn, looked expensive. Her boots were designer, even if scuffed. But what caught Ethan's attention wasn't her clothes. It was the way she was crying, silent, like someone used to hiding pain. He hesitated. He had just finished a 10-hour shift delivering groceries and had another job to get to in the morning. His worn sneakers were soaked from the rain, and his backpack weighed heavy with half-eaten leftovers. But kindness had always been his reflex. He walked over slowly, making sure not to startle her. "Hey," he said gently, crouching beside the bench. "Are you okay?" The girl startled, then looked up. Her eyes were red and rimmed with panic, mascara streaked down her cheeks. I just need to make a call," she said, her voice barely audible. "But my phone. I lost it." Ethan didn't ask why or how. He simply reached into his jacket and pulled out his old phone, screen cracked, barely holding charge. "You can use mine," he said, offering it like it was something sacred. She stared at him like he had handed her a lifeline. "Are you sure?" He nodded. "Take your time." She took the phone with both hands, her fingers trembling, and stepped a few feet away for privacy. Ethan sat on the bench she left behind, pretending not to hear the soft murmurs of her voice as she spoke into the receiver. But fragments floated through the air. "I'm not going back. I need to find something real. Please don't tell them." A few minutes later, she returned the phone, eyes still glassy but more composed. "Thank you," she whispered. He smiled softly. "Anytime." The train rumbled in from the tunnel, its lights casting shadows across the damp platform. Ethan stood. "You heading anywhere?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I don't know where yet. But, can I sit with you for a while?" He gestured to the subway doors. "Of course. You're safe with me." And just like that, two strangers boarded the train, one running from a world of gold, the other quietly rich in something far more rare. The train hummed steadily along the tracks, its motion rhythmic and oddly comforting. Ethan and the girl, still a stranger in name, but not in emotion, sat side by side, the flickering fluorescent lights above casting soft shadows on their faces. She held his phone loosely in her lap, her thumbs brushing over its worn edges as if grounding herself in its imperfection. A world away from the polished glass and gold-plated gadgets she was used to. Ethan glanced at her briefly. Her eyes, though calmer now, still carried something fragile, like stained glass, beautiful but on the verge of shattering. "You okay?" he asked gently. She nodded but didn't speak at first. Then, after a pause, her voice barely a whisper, she said, "I told my driver not to tell anyone he saw me." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Your driver?" She looked at him, almost shyly. "Yeah. I guess it's obvious. I'm not used to this." Ethan smiled kindly, brushing away the surprise. "I figured you weren't from around this part of the city." She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "My name's Leah," she offered. Then, after a beat, added, "Well, actually, it's Amelia. But I haven't used that name in a while." Ethan offered his hand. "Ethan. Just Ethan." She shook it lightly, her cold fingers brushing against his calloused palm. "Thanks again for the phone. You didn't even ask who I was. Or what I was running from." He shrugged. "Didn't think it mattered." You looked like you needed someone to be human with you. That's all. Her lips curved into the softest of smiles. For someone who'd spent her life surrounded by people who only saw her for her last name, this moment, this man, was different. No questions. No expectations. Just presence. I didn't even know where I was going, she admitted. I just needed to get away from everything. My family, the pressure, the fake smiles. I wanted to know if real people still existed. Ethan chuckled, leaning back against the seat. Well, if you're looking for real, you're on the right train. It may not go to fancy places, but it gets you where you need to be. The train screeched as it slowed at the next stop. She didn't move. Neither did he. They sat quietly, strangers bonded not by names or status, but by something more powerful, an unspoken understanding. In that moment, the subway car wasn't just transportation. It was a bridge between two worlds, hers of wealth and suffocation, his of struggle and soul. And neither of them realized it yet, but their journey together had only just begun. By the time they stepped out of the subway, the city had turned bitter and wet. A steady drizzle clung to the streets, soaking everything in a cold mist. Leah wrapped her arms tightly around herself, shivering as the wind bit through her damp coat. Ethan noticed and instinctively took off his own jacket, thin, frayed at the cuffs, and draped it over her shoulders. You'll freeze, she protested softly. I'll survive, he said with a quiet grin. Come on. My place isn't far. They walked through a maze of modest brick buildings, graffiti-tagged alleys, and flickering street lamps until they reached a narrow apartment complex. The hallway inside smelled faintly of old newspapers and instant noodles. His apartment was small, just one bedroom, a living room that doubled as a dining area, and a cramped kitchen, but it was clean, warm, and full of quiet dignity. Ethan motioned her to sit on the worn-out couch. You okay with soup? It's canned, but I add some magic to it, he said, trying to lighten the air. Leah smiled faintly. Soup sounds perfect. As he heated the pot on the stove, she looked around. There were photos on the wall, Ethan and a woman in a hospital bed, smiling despite the tubes. Books stacked neatly in the corner, a tattered calendar marked with work shifts and doctor appointments. That your mom? She asked gently. Ethan nodded. Yeah. She passed last year. I'm trying to hold things together. It's been hard. There was no self-pity in his voice. Just honesty. Resilience. He brought over 2 steaming bowls of chicken noodle soup and handed her one. She took a spoonful and sighed softly. This is the best thing I've tasted in days. They ate in silence for a while, broken only by the occasional clink of the spoon against the bowl. The rain tapped gently against the window like a lullaby. I can't believe you did all this, Leah said eventually. For a stranger. Ethan shrugged. You looked like someone who just needed to feel safe for a night. I've been there. And someone helped me once when I had nothing. Her eyes welled up, but she blinked the tears away. I didn't think people like you existed anymore. He gave her a small, tired smile. People like me are everywhere. We just don't make headlines. She didn't know it yet, but that night in a humble apartment with soup and sincerity would become the anchor in her storm, the first place she'd feel truly seen in years. And for the first time, she didn't want to run. The next morning brought a shy sun peeking through gray clouds, casting a soft glow into Ethan's modest apartment. Leah stirred on the couch, wrapped in one of his mom's old blankets. The scent of instant coffee and toast drifted through the air as Ethan moved quietly in the kitchen, humming to himself. Leah sat up, rubbing her eyes. You're really a morning person, huh? Ethan chuckled. Only when I have company. He handed her a mismatched mug. It's not fancy, but it's hot. She took it gratefully, sipping as she watched him. There was something calming about his presence, no performance, no expectations. Just kindness wrapped in simplicity. As he flipped through TV channels looking for the weather, the screen suddenly froze on a breaking news segment. A polished anchorwoman, perfectly made up, stood beside a photo of a girl with long chestnut hair and striking eyes. Heiress Amelia Langford still missing. Family offers $1 million reward for information. Ethan's hand paused mid-air, the remote trembling slightly. He turned slowly to look at Leah, then back at the screen. It was unmistakable. Even in the grainy surveillance footage they showed next, her walking into a subway station with no security in sight, it was her. Same coat. Same eyes. Same expression. Leah's face paled, but her shoulders didn't slump. She set her coffee down and whispered, "I was hoping I had a little more time." Ethan blinked, not angry, just surprised. "You're her?" Leah nodded. "Amelia Langford. My father runs Langford Global. I'm supposed to be the Golden Girl, Ivy League, designer gowns, charity balls. But every second of that life felt like I was living someone else's dream." She looked away, her voice catching. "I ran because no one ever asked what I wanted. They loved the brand, not the girl." Ethan exhaled, sitting across from her. "And what do you want?" She met his gaze. "I wanted to find someone real. Someone who didn't care about my last name. I was tired of being valued by headlines and inheritance." He was quiet for a moment, then said simply, "You found someone." Tears brimmed in her eyes, not from fear this time, but from the relief of being seen. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I just needed to know if kindness still existed without strings." He smiled softly. "It does. At least in this apartment, it does." In that small kitchen, over burnt toast and breaking news, the weight of secrets lifted. And for the first time in a long time, Leah felt not like an heiress on the run, but just a girl, safe in the presence of someone who truly saw her. 1 year later, the same neighborhood that had once felt dim and forgotten now buzzed with unusual energy. Bright banners fluttered from lamp posts. Kids chased balloons across the sidewalk. A brand new community library stood proudly at the corner where an abandoned lot had once gathered dust and graffiti. Ethan stood near the crowd, dressed in the same second-hand blazer he wore to job interviews, clutching a formal invitation he still couldn't believe was real. "Special guest of honor," it read. His name was handwritten below. He looked around, both nervous and curious. He had no idea who had nominated him, or why he'd been asked to speak. The mayor stepped up to the podium and tapped the mic. "Thank you all for joining us today for the opening of this long-awaited community library. But before we begin, I want to recognize someone special, someone whose quiet act of kindness started a ripple effect none of us could have imagined." Ethan tilted his head, confused. A sleek black SUV pulled up at the curb. The door opened slowly, and out stepped a woman in a navy blue dress and flats. Her long hair was neatly braided, and a warm smile lit up her face as she walked to the podium. Ethan's heart skipped. It was Leah. But not the scared, shivering girl from the subway. This Leah, Amelia, stood tall, confident, and glowing. The crowd hushed as she began to speak. "Last year, I disappeared," she said. "Not because I was lost, but because I was searching. Not for luxury or headlines, but for something real. Someone real." Her eyes found Ethan in the crowd. "I found that in a man named Ethan, a stranger who lent me his phone without question. Who gave me soup when I was cold, and kindness when I had nothing to give back. That single moment reminded me what humanity looks like." The audience was silent, riveted. "I used to be an heiress," she continued. "Now, I'm something better, I'm someone who knows the value of small kindnesses. And in honor of that lesson, this library was built. Funded anonymously, yes. But inspired by a man who lives in this neighborhood." She gestured toward Ethan. "Please join me in thanking him." Applause erupted. Ethan's throat tightened. He walked forward slowly, heart pounding, as she met him halfway and hugged him tight. She whispered, "I kept my promise. I found something real. And I'm giving it back." As they stood there, in front of the new heart of the community, the past faded behind them, replaced by a new story. One of kindness, courage, and the quiet power of one selfless act.